Welcome for being here. My name is Margarita, and on behalf of everyone here at OSHA, I want to welcome you and thank you for participating in our program. Today, I want to start by welcoming and thanking all of our donors whose donations have made this renovation possible. This is a brand new classroom. We just completed a renovation, and again, we really thank you for your donations. If you are interested in donating, we are in the midst of our annual campaign, so please stop by the reception desk and you can pick up a donation form there. Now I would like to go over some housekeeping rules. Number one, I ask you to please turn off your cell phones. This is a very small classroom, so if your cell phone rings or vibrates, it will definitely be interrupting our presenters, so we appreciate your collaboration with this. Number two, I ask to please, if you need to speak to someone, to wait until the program has ended. As I had mentioned before, this is a small space, so if you're speaking to someone, the presenter and everybody else in the classroom will be listening. Number three, I ask that everyone please make sure that you provided your license plate number. The university does give some parking citations, so we ask that you make sure that we have the appropriate license plate number in our system. And finally, there's no food or drinks allowed here except for water. And now I would like to introduce your presenter for today, Ms. Cindy Stein-Rubin. It's really an honor and a privilege to have her here. She is an award-winning tenure professor. She's a certified speech-language pathologist. She's an author of 2 graduate-level books. She is a professional life coach. It's really, really an honor to have her here. Today's presentation, she's going to speak about the science of improving secrets of happiness. I feel you communicating empathically. So please help me welcome Ms. Cindy Stein-Rubin. Thank
you. Thank you so much for those really kind and warm words. And thank you to Ben Joella and Judith Scara for inviting me to do this talk today. I really appreciate that. I'm very grateful. And I'm so happy to see all of you here. Welcome, and thank you very much for coming. I am going to share some thoughts with you on happiness, as you see. And technology is not my wheelhouse. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Yes, I'm going to share some thoughts today on happiness, but as I'm looking around, I'm getting a little intimidated because I'm saying to myself, what do they need me for? I mean, I'm looking at all of you, and you guys have these shining faces, happy faces, and let's face it, we live in Boca for the most part. I mean, we're in La La Land here. We've got the best weather, the best climate. We can do whatever we want all year round. We can play, we can golf, we can tennis, and we've got palm trees everywhere we look. It's so uplifting. The sky is blue, the sun is shining all the time. We have opportunities for socializing like nowhere else. There is so much socializing going on here. And that, as we're going to learn, is the pillar, the main pillar of happiness. Friendships, connecting, communicating, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But why do we need happiness? I mean, let's say you all seem happy and you live in Boca. Well, that's just part of it, really. We're going to talk about the rest of it. That's just a little small piece of happiness. That's not the whole answer. But why be happy? Why do we need this? What's important about being happy? It's good for your blood pressure. Excellent. It's good for your health. What else? What else is it good for?
People want to talk to you and be with you.
Absolutely. I mean, we don't want to be with Debbie Downer. We want to be with someone that has a positive outlook. What else is important about being happy?
It energizes you.
That's great. That's great. It energizes you. And when you're uplifted and energized, you, according to the research, will have more success at whatever it is you're doing. And also, we pay it forward when we're happy. It's a cycle. And when we're happy, we're making other people happy. Just like this lovely lady said, you want to be around happy, right? And so we're giving other people permission to be happy. And those people are giving other people permission. And because they're happy, more people are uplifted and happy. And so it has this whole spiral effect and a whole spiral effect going up for you, because the more happy you are, the better results you get in your life. And then the more happy you are, and then the better results you get, and on and on and on. So it's good for you, it's good for society. And why else happiness now? Well, to date, we are the most depressed, anxious, suicidal, obese nation to date. There is also an extreme rise in anti-Semitism this past year, and racism in general. So we really do need to talk about happiness. We really do need to talk at this particular juncture. And it is a buzzword these days. And also, why not get happier if you're already happy? You get happier, you could be more uplifted, have better communication with people, more success, deeper conversations, better relationships, better self-esteem, so why not? I mean, it's all good. After all, didn't Aristotle say happiness is the holy grail of existence? And there was an interesting article in the New Yorker called Pursuit of Happiness, where they went back to the time of Aristotle and how he talked about happiness. And we will link that into our discussion in just a minute. Let me ask you this, though. Is there such a thing as too happy?
Only if people are depressed and they're down, it may make them feel worse. If you're all happiness and you're all beautiful.
It's a great example. Mystery Loves Company, right? Yes.
I've got somebody like Robin Williams, he made his living on being funny. You don't usually know people's background. And then when you found out, then he had some physical problems that entered, and he's on the stage where people would see. So people said to me, comedians usually are, in general, sad people. I never even thought about it like that. So maybe you could explore that.
Oh, that's wonderful what you just said. That's a very interesting point, and it's very true. There are people who, along the lines of what you're saying, suffer from disorders where they may go in cycles. They may be very, very euphoric or manic, and then that'll go on for a number of months or days or weeks or whatever for the individual person, and then they crash and they're in a cycle of depression. And the extremes are devastating for the person and for the families and people around them. And this is a very hard thing to remediate. So yes, when you're manic, you're too happy. And you don't really know what goes on behind closed doors. We know what we know about Robin Williams, but we also don't know what happened. Maybe there were times when he wasn't flying high in that euphoric state that we see him in when he performs. And what about people who are like Pollyanna? Do you know any Pollyannas? What does Pollyanna mean? What is Pollyanna? Yes.
To find the absolute best view of the best facet of every situation.
Okay, that's definitely part of it. Very good. Anybody else? What does Pollyanna mean, to be a Pollyanna?
Who anybody wants you to fit in.
Okay, that's a great suggestion. What else? Helene?
I think you just see the world through rose-colored glasses all the time. You know, just that constant seeing the good. It's not
Excellent.
realistic.
The glass is always full.
Right.
Excellent,
But I
excellent.
think that the connotation of being a Pollyanna is that's not realism.
Excellent, beautiful. So, she stole my lines, which she often does, and what I wanted to talk about was optimism, and it goes on a continuum. You could be all the way the most optimistic, like a Pollyanna, or you could be at the opposite extreme, like Eeyore. You know Eeyore on, is he on Sesame Street? Is that what? Winnie the Pooh, I'm sorry. He's on Winnie the Pooh, and he says, when he gets a compliment, he says, "Thanks for noticing me." So there are some people who are Eeyores, and there are some people who are Pollyannas, and they're at the opposite extreme of, but what do we say about extremes? Nicht good, right? Not so good, the extremes. So when we meet a Pollyanna and we may talk to that person about our problem, maybe we have a problem, and maybe it isn't a catastrophe, but it's something that's bothering us. And that person may say something like, "Oh, turn that frown upside down," or "No, you don't. You don't really feel that way." Or, "Are you kidding? Look at all the good you have. I don't know why you would feel that way. Look, everything's good for you." So are those the kinds of things that we really want to hear when we're upset and we're trying to talk about feelings? Do we want to hear "don't feel that way"? No. How does that make us feel when somebody is telling us that? Worse. What else?
Dismissive.
Unheard.
Not validated.
Unheard, excellent. Dismissed, excellent. Not validated. Sounds right? Sounds right, right? We don't want to hear that. What do we want to hear if we're talking?
Empathy.
Support.
I'm sorry.
Beautiful.
Sorry you feel that way.
Beautiful. Sorry for what you're going through. Yes, yes, excellent. Okay, so Pollyanna's perfection is overrated, I would say. Because who do you want to hang with? Do you want to hang with Pollyanna? Or do you want to hang with Pollyanna, somebody who's perfect and only wants to speak perfect emotions and positive emotions, doesn't want to go near or say anything painful or touch it? Or do you want to be with somebody real, authentic, honest, and transparent? What's more pleasant for you? Who do people gravitate toward, right? The more authentic person is who people want to be with. And that's because perfection is a facade. There is no perfect person. We are all imperfect. We are all perfectly imperfect. And that's the way we start to like ourselves better. We're not going to like ourselves better if we say, "Oh, blow myself a kiss in the mirror in the bathroom and say, 'You're gorgeous.'" That's not going to do anything. That's self-help. You want to do that, okay, I'm not saying it's going to hurt you. But you may want to look in the mirror and say, "I did it. I met that challenge. Look at me. I'm still standing. Wow. I have to really give myself credit for that." That's a more realistic thing to look in the mirror and talk about than just fluff. And so we are in a situation, according to positive psychology, even though positive psychology is the science of happiness, they believe in facing, naming, processing all emotions, the full range of emotions, because we are all human, and it doesn't matter where we come from, and it doesn't matter what race, religion, culture, country, socioeconomic level we come from. We all have the same emotions. Since the beginning of time, we've all had the same emotions. Nobody is without painful emotions. They may not want to look at those emotions. They may not want to process them, face them, talk about them. But everyone has, in addition to the positive, like joy, awe, exuberance, happiness. Everybody has, in addition to that, sadness, anxiety, guilt, shame, anger. No exceptions. Yes.
What about people who are the Debbie Downers, but they don't know they're Debbie Downers? They come from that kind of a family. I'll give you a perfect example.
Good luck with that. No, but you're 100% right. Go on. I'm just kidding.
I'll give you an example. In our family, there was a birthday party for an older person. This is many years ago. And my son lived many miles away, and he was on some medication where he had gained some weight. So the aunt says to him, "My God," she says, "you really have gotten fat, haven't you?" And he was going through a bad time at this time, and he says, "Aunt Anna, I'm sorry, I can't deal with this. I have a lot on my plate. I love you," and he walked away. He mentioned it to me. So she says to him, this is now a Hunter College graduate and all, "Well, what would you like me to say?" Now, I didn't think about it at the time, but I mulled it around for a long time in my head. I don't think these people really want to hurt anybody. How about, "Gee, I haven't seen you in a long time. It's nice that you traveled all these miles to celebrate this, whatever it was that was going on."
Very good.
So you said that everybody seems happy here. You're talking probably to the choir more than, because some of the people that should be aren't here because they don't know.
So I'm really glad you said that, but I'm also not so happy you said that because you stole my lines. Because I am going to be talking about that in about half a minute. So will be an answer to your question, I hope.
Yeah.
And if it's not an answer, please let me know. Okay, so as I was just saying, and along the lines of what you're saying, the science of happiness is not only about joyful emotions. As a matter of fact, we have to give ourselves the permission to feel all of our emotions. And a lot of us have been raised. Sadness? No, don't feel that, don't show that. Anger? Oh, be pleasing, especially women, you know. And so we have been raised that you don't complain. And I'm not talking about that we should sit there complaining and spitting out our whole life story to a stranger. What I am saying is that we do need to recognize and give ourselves the permission to feel those feelings. Sometimes people go through tragedy and they really want to steel themselves from it and they don't want to think about it. When a person is ready to think about it, that's the time when they need to just start to process what it is they're feeling, cry, talk about it with someone, because this is very, very cathartic. Why? All emotions flow through the same emotional pipeline, positive emotions and painful emotions. So if you don't process those painful emotions, if you don't really face them and say, this is what I'm feeling right now, let me name it, let me sit with it. Let me sit with pain for a minute. Let me close my eyes. This is how I'm feeling. This is where I feel it in my body. This is where I feel it in my body. This is where I feel it in my body. And really get close and personal with that pain. It's not fun. It's not pleasant. It's not something that is easy to do. It's a tremendously courageous act. Tremendously courageous. We don't want to be with pain. But the pipeline only is good for the two types of emotions. So if you don't process the pain, the pipeline is clogged. And there's no room for the positive flow of positive emotions to get in. So sometimes, you know, we might feel stuck a little bit about feeling joy. Sometimes some of us might feel like, gee, this happened, and it's so fabulous and exciting and thrilling, but I'm not taking it in. Somehow I'm not feeling it. And maybe the pipeline is blocked from other emotions that haven't been worked through. And so we need to give ourselves the permission to be human in order to be happy. And it's counterintuitive because you would think, oh, why do we have to feel bad in order to feel good? Well, we kind of do. We have to visit those emotions sometimes because if we don't, they're coming to bite you somehow, some way. Your pipeline is not clear for the joy to come in. And so, in our own well-meaning way, and as a way to avoid our own stuff, we perfect. We perfect others. We give advice. We tell people what they should do. We fix. We correct. We say what I used to do and what I did was great. And we do this to everyone. We do it with our friends. We do it with our significant others. We do it with our peers, colleagues, or whatever. But most of all, we do it with our children. And so it's just something to keep a little bee in the bonnet when you talk to your grandchildren or you talk to your friend. Are you fixing them? Because when somebody talks to Pollyanna, she's fixing that person. She's trying to make that person perfect. But we're not perfect, and we have to be human. So we have to think about this, how often we might advise our daughter-in-law, or we might tell our children when they're telling us something exciting that they need to just straighten out their shirt, or that they have a stain on their shirt, which I do a lot with my boys. And you know what? You must be thinking at this point, I must be the happiest person on earth because I'm talking about happiness. So obviously I am speaking from first person that I'm the happiest. Au contraire, my friends, au contraire. I was not my whole life the happiest of people. Yes, on the outside, I appear to be social. I appear to be upbeat and somewhat energetic, I think. However, I'm going to tell you that. And then there are people who say to me, and clients who say to me when I admit this to them, they say, well, how could that be? Look what you have. You have this, you have that, poo, poo, poo. And they're telling me, how could you have the nerve to say that you haven't been the happiest person? And I say, well, I do appreciate what I have, and I am grateful. I am not mindful of how grateful I need to be, and I think a lot of us have that problem. We need to focus on that a lot. However, the reason that this occurs is the answer to this lovely lady's question earlier. If you take a look at the slide and handout number 1, you will see why I might not be the happiest person. Sonia Lubmersky came up with research on this, and she said, 50% of the pie of happiness is your happiness set point. That is your default level of being that you're wired to be. Have you ever seen babies and then you see them grow up and they're so much like their personality as a baby? I'm not talking about colicky babies or babies that are ill, but I'm saying if it's a normal baby without colic and then they grow up, I mean, some of us have kids. I know all my kids are different, and I know one son who was always like this with kissing, and the other two were always smiling and cuddling and wanting the affection. This is from birth. So from birth, 50% of my happiness set point is related to my genes and how I'm hardwired. My parents, my father passed away, God rest his soul, and my mother is alive, were both very pessimistic people growing up, very nervous people, depressive people, and angry people. So, it's really good if you have one parent at least who's safe. You need one safe person, but both of my parents were volatile. I'm not saying that I was abused in a way that it was physical abuse, but I never knew when the other shoe was gonna fall. It was always very unstable emotionally in my house, mood-wise. So I'm wired, my happiness set point is determined, 50% is my happiness set point determined by my genetics. And I had depressed grandmothers too, by the way. 40%, the good news, this is a great news. 40% of your happiness level is determined by your intention, what you do, the actions that you do. There are tools, the things that you do, and there are so many, to increase your happiness level. And about 10% is related to your context, to Boca. Hence the reason why I said Boca, palm trees, and beautiful weather is not the whole pie. It's not the whole answer. And so you can see a little bit and think about your own happiness set point, genetics, behavior, and understand a little bit about why your happiness level is what it is. And in addition, we'll talk today about some tools and some attitudes that are important to adopt in order to increase happiness. One of them we spoke about, and that's giving yourself the permission and other people the permission to be human. And so we are going to go into other tools today. But enough about moi. I want to hear about you. What for you is happiness? What is happiness? What makes you happy? Just call it out. What makes you happy?
A beautiful day.
A beautiful day, great.
Good health.
Good health, great.
Producing something.
Producing something, great.
Success of your children.
Success of your children, oh boy, that's a big one. You're only as happy as your most unhappy child, right. Children is big time, big time.
Unrealistic expectations that parents have about how successful their children should be.
Oh, she's stealing my lines again. Excellent. What else? Being creative makes you happy. I love that one. Love it. What else makes people happy?
New York Mets victory.
Could you repeat it, please?
Going
New
on
York
trips.
Mets victory. Very good one.
Being productive.
Being productive. I love it. Accomplishing something. That's in the research that I'm going to give you in a second. Anybody else? What else?
Traveling.
Good relationships. Beautiful.
Helping others.
Helping others. Love it.
Exercise.
Exercise. Very important, because if you're not exercising on a regular basis, you are not at your baseline level of functioning. It's not like if you exercise, you're gonna be like, wow. If you exercise, you're just gonna be regular, normal. You're starting with a full deck. Then you can go from there. So if you're not exercising, that has a definite effect on mood, on feelings of well-being and happiness. For sure, for sure. It's baseline, you gotta get to baseline. Then you can thrive from there. But if you're not at baseline, you're under. Anybody else?
I just thought of something, being in the moment.
Being present,
Yes.
mindful.
Being present to yourself and not being multitasked and being present when you're with another person, not looking at your watch all the time, but you're there physically, but you're not there emotionally.
Excellent, excellent. Being present, mindfulness, a very important part of happiness, absolutely. So it's, as you can see, if I ask you for a definition, it's a little hard, right? Because so many people have so many different things that they could say they could call happiness. And the truth is, it's very hard to define. We know happiness when we experience it, but it's a hard thing to put into words. So the psychologists tried, and what they put into words was, happiness is the experience of joy, contentment, and well-being, coupled with a sense that life is good, meaningful, and worthwhile. And by the way, I just want to say something that this reminded me of. My mother's name is Wertheim, that's her last name, and she's worthwhile on her AOL address. Just wanted to tell you that. So what are some of the reasons why people are unhappy? What do you think causes unhappiness? What's part of the reason?
Wanting too much, expecting too much.
Right, excellent. And somebody else also mentioned expectation.
Comparing themselves to other people.
Comparing themselves.
Not having someone to share with.
Excellent.
Yeah, looking for happiness from external sources.
Oh, you stole my lines. Thank you. Looking for happiness from external sources. Big line of mine that's coming up. Yes.
Difficult relationships.
Difficult relationships. Yes, because relationships are such an important pillar that when things go awry, many of us don't feel right. We feel not at peace. We don't feel a sense of well-being and tranquility. Yes, yes.
Mental health and poor health,
Mental health and,
like bipolar disorder,
Right.
depression, fibromyalgia.
right,
They have poor health and
Yes.
they get depressed and then they
yes,
can't get out of
yes.
that.
That's correct. Yes.
Preoccupation and fixation on negative circumstances.
Very well said. The occupation and fixation on negative circumstances, which would be what we talked about as a pessimist or somebody more on the pessimistic part of the spectrum. Yes.
Envy?
Envy is bad. It's terrible.
Very bad.
Right. It's terrible.
Financial concerns.
Correct. I mean, sometimes there's real financial trouble, but focus on money, that's a big one. Yes.
Can I just feed into what the other gentleman said?
Oh, yes,
about,
yes, please.
Thinking about things that are negative, especially if you've never come to terms with it, you can think about it all your life, and it could get worse and worse. It's not like a wine that gets better with age.
Right.
And especially if you lose a parent at an early age.
Yes.
I didn't, but my husband did.
Yes.
And I don't think he ever got over it. In fact, an uncle came and said, this is 1945. I don't see you crying at the funeral. My husband said later, he cried for 3 years until he died with cancer, you know? So it's difficult when you have relationships. You don't understand where the other person is coming from.
I know that.
I feel like an ass.
No,
but
no.
it's, you know.
We all have painful emotions.
Yeah.
You're the same as all of us. You're
Yeah.
the same as all of us. Yes.
Perception of always being the victim.
Ooh, that's
Yeah.
a great one. That's a great one. Being a passive victim as opposed to an active agent in your life. Yes, I love that. Yes? in the back.
Guilt and anxiety.
Guilt and anxiety, correct.
Lack of hope.
Yeah, yeah.
Lack of spirituality.
Very big one, very big one. In the science, it's been proven that spirituality is a very big contribution to happiness. It's an important aspect of happiness. People that are spiritual, even some research shows, tend to live longer. There is something about spirituality that is giving you a feeling of being whole, of being safe, of being part of something bigger than who you are, and it does have a very, very big effect. Yes,
Being chronically discontented.
yes, yes, again, the pessimistic victim. Yes.
We're also living in an age of social media where the news that we're getting is very negative.
Yes, yes.
Which also impacts me.
Our mood.
Well, I've talked to people who have like syndromes from it.
Yeah.
They get addicted to the news and then they're stuck in this negative thinking
Mindset,
cycle.
yeah. Some of us shut the news off and go to bed without watching it because it's too disturbing. And there's so much of it coming in all day, all the time. So, all of you said excellent points. Happiness, unhappiness is due to partially people looking for happiness in the wrong places. And so you mentioned intrinsic factors versus extrinsic factors. If you notice, most of the comments you made regarding happiness were related to intrinsic feelings, factors, parenting, loving, children, family, and any other pleasant emotions that you get from various things. But nobody really said money, power, fame, bad boys, drugs, alcohol. You know, nobody said that. So some people look for happiness in the wrong places, and unfortunately people get influenced. There's a tremendous peer influence, and tragedy happens. So Aristotle agrees with you, and he actually said that happiness comes from the internal factors. Things like good character, things like integrity, things like helping. Those give you the deep feeling of happiness. Now, in the Bible, it said, Ezehu Ashir Hasameach Bechalko. Who is the wealthy one? The one who is happy with his lot, not the one who has money. The rich one is not the one who has money. And it's interesting because I remember my parents used to have a conversation, and my father was a very bright man. He was an engineer, but he didn't make a tremendous amount of money, especially they sent us to private school. And so we always kind of struggled with money because of that. And my mother said to my father, "Who is the richest man in the world?" And my father would smile and he would say, "I am." Because look at these girls. We were 3 sisters, and my mother knew that he was a quiet man, but sometimes he'd be smiling, and she knew when he'd be smiling, he'd be thinking of his children. So that saying from the Bible is very powerful. And then when people look for happiness in the wrong places, look what happens, for example, with money. People win the lottery. What happens? They win the money, they're so happy for 5 minutes, and then down. So what happens is when we focus on the wrong places looking for happiness, we end up getting happy. Like, who doesn't want to win money? I mean, we all would love that, right? But the joy that you get from that is very short-lived. It's short-lived and it's not long-lasting. It's a spike and then it goes down. There are certain things that we can do to make our happiness last longer. One big factor is gratitude and acknowledgement. So, we're going to talk about the power of acknowledgement and gratitude. And it has been researched and proven that when you write down 3 good things every day in a journal near your bed, or you have a significant other or a friend that you could discuss this with on the phone or in person, what are 3 good things that happened for you, let's say today? And you write it down and you discuss with each other. And this is something that you could do at the table with your family, your children, your grandchildren. You could do it with your friends when you go out for dinner. It's a different kind of conversation, but it opens up a lot of intimacy when you have these deeper conversations. So, 3 good things, and I recommend it highly. Then there is something called a gratitude visit. If you can think about somebody who had an impact in your life that maybe made a difference for you, or changed your life, or something that you really appreciate very much. A fabulous thing to do that gives long-lasting elevation and happiness, not this, but for a long time, like months. Better than drugs is a gratitude visit, where you write a letter to that person and you go to that person and speak in first person to that person about who that person is being in the world, what you admire about them, and what your gratitude is to them for what reason. It is so majorly powerful. It is a very, very brave act. We get lazy, we don't feel like doing it, we don't want to write the letter, then we don't want to go to their house, but it's a powerful, powerful experience. I've done this in classes that I've given, and participants and students have made things like beautiful collages that they framed. They've made pillows that they're artists, and they embroidered pillows. Any type of piece of art, and if you're not crafty, hey, just read the letter or put it in a picture frame. And it's fabulous. It's a fabulous boost in happiness that is a sustained boost. And in talking about acknowledgement, when you acknowledge a person, well, if you say to somebody, nice hair, is that an acknowledgement or a compliment? That's a compliment, right. An acknowledgement is spoken to a person in first person, with eye contact, and it's something specific. So, if I want to give an acknowledgement, I am going to acknowledge my husband. And I will say to my husband, Jeff, I must tell you, I admire you for the person you are. You have so much integrity, you always do the right thing, and you're always so sensitive to other people. And the way you speak and communicate is so sensitive to other people. And whatever anybody ever needs, you're always there to do it for them, including me. You are full of good humor, positive outlook, and just love, a lot of love, and care, and attention to me. And I am very grateful for this, and I want to tell you that I acknowledge you, and I appreciate with love all of who you are, and these wonderful character traits that you have. That's different.
My happiness
than-
just spiked through the roof.
That's different than a compliment. But you can do that on a smaller scale. For example, I can say, June, you are so talented socially. I love the way you're curious about other people and you make conversation with them. Everybody seems drawn to you. That's an acknowledgement. I said it to her in first person with eye contact. I didn't say, nice sweater. That's okay too. We should compliment each other. But isn't it sad that we don't acknowledge enough? Because think about it. Things that happen, that we see other people, who other people are being in this world, and we don't mention it, and they just go by and we go by and we're thinking it. So if we're thinking it, why aren't we saying it? Well, why do you think? What do you guys think? Why aren't people saying or speaking the acknowledgement to the other person? If it's on their mind, it's a nice thing, it's not a negative thing, yes.
Momentarily distracted by the accoutrements of their dress, of their appearance.
momentarily distracted by,
Their accoutrements,
okay,
or their facade of dress, appearance, jewelry, whatever.
this could be true. Distraction is a big factor in why the moment passes, right? Yes?
Too self-absorbed.
Okay, that's right. Very good, very true, yes.
People can be uncomfortable sharing authentic feelings.
Yep.
That's right, and why is that? Why are they uncomfortable?
Because they didn't have it themselves, they won't even
They're
compliment their
vulnerable.
own children.
Vulnerability is
Yeah.
difficult.
100%. Vulnerability is difficult. You're making yourself vulnerable when you're acknowledging someone. Hey, why are you making yourself vulnerable? What's vulnerable about that? What might happen?
I'm not sure of the outcome.
Exactly, Marlene, you're not sure of the outcome. We don't know, is the person going to not accept your acknowledgement and say, oh, no, that's crazy, that's not true. Because a lot of people do that when you compliment them, even something simple and surface as a compliment, they say, oh, no. So that doesn't feel so comfortable for the person giving the compliment, does it? Because you're being dismissed as wrong, and you don't want to be made wrong.
How do you acknowledge the acknowledgement? I mean, then as you're the giver to me, and then you say something like that, then, I mean, perhaps internally I like it, but how do I express my...
Exactly. So the person internally likes it. Everybody likes it. Who doesn't like to hear a nice word? However, they're not sure how to handle it. And, well, a couple of reasons for that. People are a little embarrassed when they get a compliment, and they feel like it's kind of a bragging thing. So they don't want to give in to the compliment and say, oh, thank you, because it's like, to them, it's being immodest, I would say, So that might be one reason why a person feels vulnerable. They may feel the compliment's not going to be accepted, and it's brave enough to step out there and name what you see, and then the person says, no. But you have to know, they like it. Everybody likes a compliment inside. Everybody likes to be acknowledged. Some people may feel, oh, they don't like to be the center of attention and they're shy, and maybe it's not. And the other thing is, people may think, well, maybe the other person thinks that you're tochslecking them. You're TLing them, you're kissing up to them, and that is uncomfortable feeling for the giver of the acknowledgement. I don't want you to think that I want something from you, or that I'm trying to please you or get in good with you, that sort of thing, right? Does everybody feel that sometimes?
So do you just say thank you?
Yes.
How about people, my mother used to tell this story, you'd go to somebody's house and they'd make this wonderful cake. Gee, that cake is terrific, could you share the recipe with me? Oh, sure. They never gave you all the ingredients.
Right.
They purposely left something out, so it never came out the same way. And a father, who his son comes home and says, Dad, look, I got a 97 in the test. And the father says, I don't know if this is, well, father says, yeah, so what happened to the other 3 points? Now, it might sound funny to you, but I gave that a lot of thought. I think it's a terrible thing to say. The kid came home excited with this and doesn't even understand what the father is saying. Sure, it's 3 points, but it's more than the 3 points. It's the father not acknowledging to the kid that he did something. What is he can't get
Correct.
101.
Correct.
And he doesn't know what he did that was wrong because the father was sarcastic.
Absolutely correct. And people are well-meaning, don't get me wrong, when they try to fix, perfect, should you, advise you, when they try to do all these things, they're well-meaning, they want to help. They want to help, but that would not be the way to respond. That would be the opposite of the way to respond to that, There's something called active and constructive responding. When somebody tells you something good, like this child, you need to really get curious about it and ask them to replay it, Oh, tell me about that. When did you find out? Was it during the afternoon? Oh, wow, you must have been so excited. Can you tell me, was the test very difficult? Just questions about recreating the experience. Well, how did you feel when you got that mark? What did that do for you? So it's about constructively responding to your child, to your friend, to your grandchildren, to your significant other. Always asking about the event. Well, how did you feel? What happened? Tell me where you were when you got the raise. Did he tell you in his room, your boss? And what did you say? And were you surprised, or was this something that you expected, etc., etc., etc.? So, we're in this conversation that we're having now, we're beginning to talk about communication, relationships and communication. Yes.
When you talk to your husband, Jack, what did you do the next day? I mean, how often do you say these things?
I think something like that is a once in a while thing.
What about when you're happy, but you're dealing with other people that are in your family that you are gonna have to deal with on a semi-regular
Right.
basis, that are very unhappy, and they have these feelings of jealousy and resentment towards you, and they have, you know, obviously maybe some bipolar and other issues. You have to deal with them, and you don't know how to best deal with them because they're never happy.
Correct. Correct. And it's usually best, going back to what I talked about and giving the person permission to be human, it's usually best to, and I know this is hard and then it's just so repetitive because they're your family, you can pick your friends, you can't pick your relatives, but it's usually best to hear the feelings and just name the feeling that they're feeling. Don't get into a combat with them if you could possibly avoid it. Just hear them. Oh, I hear that you're feeling really torn. It must be so hard. And just let them talk and continue. And just hear what they're feeling and take yourself out of the equation.
But those kind of people don't really relate to their feelings, they're just negative in their expression, so they're not really opening up about how they really feel.
But you could
They're
still
just
name, you
negative.
could still name the feeling, you know?
Just anger and.
Like for example, when my grandchild falls, and he's hysterical, a little tot. I'm talking about somebody that's like 2.5 years old, and he falls and he cries, right? He's hysterical. So I bend down, and I used to be able to pick him up, but my back is so bad that I can't do it anymore. So I just hug him, and I'm squatting down, and I hug him and I say, oh, are you feeling so hurt because, or whatever happened? Let's say he's crying because his sister made fun of him. So I would say, oh, are you crying because your feelings got hurt? Yay! Okay. And he runs away and he goes and he goes, I want a snack. It's amazing that when you when you just like try to argue and say, oh, it's not so bad. Well, just like we talked about with adults. Oh, it's not so bad. Oh, get a life, get a grip on it. Big boys don't cry. You know, just hear the feeling. He didn't really tell you a feeling. I know I'm comparing it to a little child, but
But adults don't necessarily share their anger, they just act out in an angry way.
it seems
That
like
makes it very
it
difficult
seems
to
to
be
it
around
seems to me that you are not yourself. You're not feeling, you're not feeling yourself. It seems to me that you're, you know.
Absolutely, because they act that way all the time.
My sister acts like this, and I just decided not to talk to her anymore. And I have no back pain, no neck pain, no anxiety.
Right.
And it feels,
Right.
but I see that there will never be, she can't express her emotions.
Well, in extreme situations, you need to remove yourself from the situation. Look, there are situations where a child is being so verbally abused by a father, and I know this person personally, she's in my family, that that child has to disconnect from the father. And it's a terrible, terrible pain and a terrible, terrible conflict. And it is the theme in the book Educated. Has anybody read the book Educated? It is a prevalent theme in that book. Somebody had to leave the home and leave the father. because it got to the point where he was infringing on her total sense of well-being and personhood, and she couldn't go on anymore. So there are degrees, and there are degrees, sometimes it's not as severe, but depending upon the level, it could be that extreme that you do at least have to remove yourself from the situation, yes.
So when someone isn't processing or even identifying or naming their own negative emotions, what can you do to help them?
Well, when they're talking to you and maybe they mention something, you would name what you hear happening. First of all, responses like, uh-huh, are good. Responses like, that's okay, are good. Responses like, that must be so hard, are good. Responses like, metaphors like, wow, it sounds you're between a rock and a hard place, are good. So those kinds of things are empathetic responses, which we're going to talk about now, difficult conversations, which we're coming into now. And does that help you a little bit?
Well, not really, because,
Okay.
If I try to draw them out, he'll then say, well, you weren't supposed to say something like I saw it coming, which I do sometimes. I'm supposed to say something that is unrealistic of, gee, I wish it had been better.
Right. Because it's all about listening to the feelings and acknowledging those feelings and validating them. It's not about telling what to do, advising, or correcting. It's not about throwing in a negative comment. That's only going to get you into a problematic situation. Yes?
I agree. I think both active and reflective listening are good strategies for both to older people and children.
And we'd have more peace in the world if people would do that. Everybody's so hooked in on being right, they don't want to just stop and listen. Yes, Helene?
I think also, you can't always be a fixer. You can't fix it.
That's right.
So sometimes, and there are people that just complain. If they're in Florida, it's too hot. If they're in New York, it's too cold. If it's too humid, it's too dry.
That's right.
You know what? Sometimes you just have to listen and go on with your day.
That's right.
Done. And,
If you're going to keep that person in your life, you have to make a decision.
Right. If you want to keep that person in your life, I have a cousin who, it's, a nightmare, but she's my family, and I'm not ready to give her up.
You're not ready, right.
Because she's one of my only relatives, and so I listen to her bitch and complain.
Right, and it must be hard. But it's a choice that you're making. How are you going to deal with it? You're not going to let it get to you. You're just going to let it go over. That's the attitude you adopted. And for now, this is the way it's going to work. June?
I don't like the response, aha. I feel it's dismissive. I feel that there's no validation. I think that the person just cuts you off and you don't really know how they feel. So, this particular but if you're telling something really painful to you, just means I don't want to hear more. I really don't maybe agree with you. I don't know what to say. I mean, it's just the is like dismissive. That's how I feel.
Well, you're entitled to your feelings, but it could be when you say that's what it means. But it's not necessarily what somebody else
I'm thinking of one person in
means.
particular, right? Because she's always dismissive. Okay.
Right. There's an example in your head of some way that has a negative connotation. Very good. That could happen. Yes.
I'm thinking of a question. I don't know how to explain it to you. You go to an affair or a concert and it's a number 10 for you. You're with somebody, maybe it's a 9 for them, but to you it looks like a 3. In other words, you've known them for years, you've never seen them really get excited. So is there a way somebody internalizes joy that you can't read it on them, where another person can do it physically? It's kind of a far out question, but.
Pathways in the brain are formed by negative thoughts and beliefs. So your brain is actually being carved all your life with this negativity and this pessimistic responses. The automatic negative response over and over and over again digs pathways in your brain of negativity. You can change your brain by altering your thought pattern. You can't fix them.
That's Dr. Raymond on TV, on the
Okay.
too, yeah.
Okay, but if you try to change your thought patterns and you really try to look for, as the gentleman said earlier over here, you look for the positive and you try to look for what's working. Let's look for the strengths. Let's look for what's working. Let's work for what we do have, what we do know, what we can do. And if we look for the strengths and we look for the positive, they will be there. I guarantee. It may be hard for the person with negative pathways carved in their brain to see it at first, but you can retrain your brain, and by thinking of the strong and not what we can't do, how we're not enough, how we're not good enough, how this is not enough, how this is not good enough, we can change the pathways. Those pathways will start to shallow out, and the new pathways will start to form in the brain. So we can physically help ourselves if our attitudes are pessimistic and if they are consistently this way.
You're talking about a person helping themselves, but can another person help that person?
You send them to me.
But the point is,
And I will fix it.
if I would laugh at something, an idea, the whole world is, the whole movie theater is looking at you. What are you, crazy or something? I was funny in the movie, so I laughed. So what it is the person throws it back onto you. And I don't think you can help a person. I know
No.
my husband was attracted to me because I was probably just the opposite of what he was. But
A
the
lot of
point
us
is, it's
find that.
very hard to, you really can't change anybody, and.
No, you can't. You can only keep your side of the street clean and give them a number to recommend that they get help.
But
Yes.
do you think we're responsible for making that a person happy?
You're not
We just-
responsible.
We're not.
You are
We just
absolutely
have to
not
accept
responsible.
for what they say.
Because it's impossible
Right.
to control
You
that.
can't-
Because
you
you get
can't
old too
fix them.
fast and smart too late, right?
I think we have to remember that the only behavior we can modify is our own.
Correct.
Right.
That's true.
That's correct.
And when we figure that out, we'll be a happy person.
And sometimes an attitude like everyone that comes into your life is your teacher. You may have negative experiences with them, but they're there, and I'm not necessarily saying they're there for a reason, an angel sent them. I'm not of that belief, but I'm saying you can make lemonade out of lemons. You could make the best out of a bad situation, and you could say, gee, let me write down some things I learned from being in relationship with this person. But it's always important to remember, if a relationship is toxic and is having a negative effect on your life, and you are not having fun yet, it's important to remove that relationship from your life, having tried whatever it is you feel you need to try to make it better. But toxic relationships are not going to contribute to happiness, well-being, and self-esteem. And so we talked about the negative things that people might say and positive focus. When somebody says something negative to you, as opposed to when somebody says something positive to you, what do you tend to hold on to more? What sticks?
Negative.
And that's human nature. I think we're just wired for emergencies from being, from the prehistoric times. But this is true. Human beings hold on to the negative. And I call this the Teflon Velcro effect. If somebody says something negative, it's like Velcro. It sticks to you. You think about it, focus on it, you're distracted by it, you want to tell somebody about it, you're thinking about it at night when you're going to sleep. Oh my goodness, how could I have made that better? What could I have done differently? I messed up, I screwed up. when somebody says something positive, it's great for 5 minutes, and then we forget about it. We don't take in the positive experiences enough. It's not so much our nature, but Sonia Lubmersky came up with something to remediate this, and it's called the 3-to-1 ratio. And let's see how she decided to remediate. Oh, this is not my 2-to-1. Okay, this will be my next slide. Anyway, no slide for this. 3-to-1 ratio. What does that mean, a 3-to-1 ratio? We need, as human beings, three positive experiences or positive feedback, positive experience to 1 criticism or negative experience. Think about when you go, when you were working, or if you are working, when you went into the boss for a review, an annual review, and your boss says, well, you're very good with your colleagues and your peers, and your writing is excellent, you write beautiful reports, and I just would like you to work a little bit more on your presentation, the way you dress, and the way you communicate with the customers. What does that person hear? Only the last comment, right? They forgot about the other things already. They're gonna focus, 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 focus. We need to remember, people need, and I know we all acknowledge and we all compliment in our own ways, people need at least a 3-to-1 ratio. And in spousal relationships, they need a 5-to-1 ratio. So, for example, the married person is saying to her husband, honey, that shirt looks like it's a little tight on you. You know, it's pulling across your stomach. You have other shirts that really fit well. I guess this is because of your all of your good cooking. What does the husband hear? Does he hear he's a good cook? No. So when you go home, you have to tell your significant other, if they're not here, when they ask you, what did you learn today with the happiness lecture? You say, 5-to-1, baby, 5-to-1. So, if you think about this, this has significant effects across the board in all relationships. We gotta remember the ratio. We know we compliment, we know we acknowledge, but we have to be mindful. How much are we really doing it? And so, try to amp that up. We also know, now, after so much discussion, that happiness is not unidimensional, it's multidimensional. And positive psychologists, Martin Seligman and Chris Peterson did a lot of work on this, and they came up with the 5 pillars of happiness. And these are what they determined are the foundational pillars for happiness. And they created an acronym, and the acronym is PERMA, P-E-R-M-A. P for PERMA represents what? Positive emotions and feeling good. E represents engagement, finding flow. R, relationships, authentic connections. M, meaning, purposeful existence. And A, achievement, a sense of accomplishment. Remind you of some of the things you said in the beginning of the lecture? Foundational pillars for happiness. What are some, does anybody have anything to add to this? If you were creating a pillar, and it was the 6th pillar, what might that be?
Being resilient.
Resilience. Nice. Anybody else? Any other pillar for happiness?
Love. Love. Having love in your
Excellent, so
life.
we would put that under relationships. Perfect. What else? And we'll see how it falls here. What
Stand
else?
up for yourself and give your opinion.
Sorry?
Standing up for your own opinion.
Okay, so let's say that might be under achievement. You might feel that you accomplished something if you stand up for yourself and you give your opinion. That you would feel achievement, and that's a part of happiness. Yes, sir?
Self-awareness.
Self-awareness, social intelligence, emotional intelligence, that would have to fall under relationships, because if you're not self-aware, you can't relate to others. You have to know your own emotions and be honest with them. Otherwise, you can't relate to other people about their emotions. Anybody else? What gives your life meaning? M is for meaning. What gives your life meaning? It doesn't mean you have to be the President of the United States. Just anything. Just call out. What gives your life?
Accomplishments.
Accomplishments, achievements. Okay, so they do overlap a lot, Marlene. Meaningful. What's meaningful to you in your life? Yes.
Self-worth.
Having self-esteem.
Yeah.
Good. Good. You want to have meaning in of yourself. What else is meaningful to you guys? Stuff. Come on, there's stuff that's meaningful.
Purpose.
Purpose. Good. Very good.
Listening to your children's anguish and problems that maybe you don't understand because you didn't go through them, but you know that they're upsetting to them.
And that gives your life meaning, okay? And then achievement. What kinds of things gives you feelings of achievement? It could be golf, it could be tennis.
Doing things that you never thought you could do, being alone.
Great. Excellent.
Getting the kid off for payroll.
Completing something. What did you say?
Getting your child off the payroll.
Wow, that's a huge achievement, right? That's a big one.
Can you say more about what finding flow is with engagement?
Yes, thanks for asking, because I did want to talk about
Yeah.
flow. Flow, the term flow was created by a psychologist named Csikszentmihalyi. It's a long name. And he created this, he discovered and coined this concept of flow. Flow is like a ballerina doing her dance on the stage and being in her own zone. She doesn't notice the people, she doesn't notice the passage of time, she's not distracted by anything, she is just in her zone. She's experiencing flow. An athlete that is involved in a game like basketball or baseball or whatever it is, that is in the moment and fully entwined so that he is one with the activity, just one with the activity, like the ballerina. That is a person experiencing flow. Sitting on the floor with a grandchild and engaged in an activity with that child, where the child is doing a project or playing or reading, that could give a person flow. You're only with that child. You don't notice anything else around you. You don't notice the passage of time. You're not distracted. You're involved and you're intrigued and you are engaged in this child. That's flow. Flow is something that you experience where the challenge is enough, but not too much. The challenge is not larger than your capacity. You can do it realistically, but it challenges you. But it's not impossible, like me doing math. You know, I can go there and do it, but it ain't happening. So, and I'm certainly not in flow when I'm doing that, or working with technology or anything like that. I'm also not in flow when I have to find my directions and find my way. I can't find my way out of a paper bag. So in that way, I'm not in flow. I'm nervous, right? I'm this way when I'm driving my car and trying to figure out which way to go. That's why I use Waze. But in terms of flow, how many of you experience flow, and what examples can you give me in your life where you experience flow? Yes.
Often when I'm talking with someone, I find I'm so zoned in that I have no thoughts whatsoever other than about what they're saying.
Laser sharp focus, yes.
When I retired, by design, I bought an airplane kit because I knew it would take me years in order to complete it, but it would keep my brain active. And I
And-
work on that all the time.
An airplane
It
kit
provides
to build a
enormous-
plane?
And that, it's a real airplane, it provides enormous flow to my life.
That's amazing, wow. And so that's a perfect example. You're at one with the activity. It's challenging enough, but obviously it's not too challenging because you're getting there.
Correct.
Excellent, excellent. Anybody else have flow? Yes.
I will suggest that flow can be achieved in truly being engaged with someone who's talking, and you feel no necessity to remark or respond, and that you're truly with them and incorporating and listening to everything they say. I think that engages you in a way that feels like flow.
Amazing, because we are going to talk about listening, and I look at listening as like meditating, and that's exactly right. Yes,
I
yes.
was observing my son-in-law and my grandchild when she was only 4 years old. And with all these electronic gadgets, this was many years ago, she's 21 now, and I heard my daughter say, Michael, please, to get the phone, she knows that you're not with her, in the zone or in the flow.
Right.
So with these electronic things that people are using today, used to be a doctor that only knew so-and-so was giving birth or whatever, people are not in the moment. They're
Yet,
focused.
part of the reason that these things are so successful is that people are in flow while they're using them, and that's why they're so successful. Because have you seen excerpts on TV where they show the kids doing a game on the couch, and an elephant walks through the room and they don't even notice, and then like a criminal comes in and they don't even see? They are at one with that activity, and that's how fabulous the sales go with things like this. Yes, yes.
You know, working with new materials and doing arts.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Learning a new material and exploring that. And,
Beautiful. Yes, that would be a really good example of flow. Yes.
And I do golf.
Yes.
And I do art.
Yes.
So that's
Yes. So how do you feel when you're golfing and it's really a great day? Good.
I love it, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yes.
You know you're in the flow when you're oblivious of time, and an hour
Yes.
seems like a minute.
Yes, that's right. You don't notice the passage of time. You don't notice anything else. So some of you mentioned earlier that the word or the term empathy. And empathy is a very, very big part of what I want to convey to you. Because what is the most important part of being a good communicator of a conversation? What do you need to have in order to have communication? You need empathy. And what does the word empathy mean exactly?
Feeling for that
Feeling?
person.
Good.
What the other person feels.
Good. Yes.
So I was gonna say, put yourself in the other person's shoes.
Great.
And not only hearing the words, but looking at the expressions on someone's face.
That's very important.
Oh, yeah.
And you stole my lines again for listening.
Their whole body, in fact.
Right. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So a lot of the definitions have been putting yourself in somebody's shoes, but more currently it's about hearing the feelings and trying to find something in your core that makes you feel similar so that you could really identify with the person. Because we can't really walk in anybody's shoes because everybody's an individual and every situation is unique. However, we need to be able to listen to people whatever their problem is, and we need to be able to find something inside us that we could relate to that person with. It's the same thing when you're reading a book. You know, you could read the book and you could say, oh, it was boring, or you could really take a look at the characters and really find a way, if the character development in the book was, you know, good, you find a way, can you find something inside that in some way you could identify with this character's strife, with this character's anger, with this character's pain. And that's what empathy comes from. But true empathy has to start with something very important. What does true empathy start with? Exactly. So in order to be an empathetic communicator, you cannot be an empathetic communicator without listening. And I know that Dr. Feinsod is an excellent listener. And that's part of why he is successful with his patients. He listens, he hears, he's quiet, he does not interrupt. These are unbelievable qualities. So, there are different levels of listening, and I'm going to tell you about 3. One level of listening is level 1, and that is all about me. Level 1 is all about me. Everything that you say comes back to me. And it's about me and how it relates to me, and it's selfish listening. Okay? Sometimes people do it, not that they're bad people, but that's level 1. Level 2 is laser sharp focus on the other person, being present, which is something a lot of you have spoken about and mentioned. So that's level 2, and that's akin to, let's say, people who are on a romantic first date and they're in love, or maybe it's not a first date, but they're in love and they're in a restaurant and they're like in a bubble because one is focused laser sharp on the other and they don't hear anything around them and they're not distracted by the movement that's going on around them or all the activities. Level 3, that's listening with intuition. That's listening like this lady just spoke about earlier, listening with looking at facial expression, getting a hunch that this person is not saying what they really mean because their face doesn't match their words. Like, oh, you're getting married, that's so exciting. Yeah. You could tell the word is yeah, but the feeling is not yeah. Nonverbal communication communicates 65% of conversations. So we can tell more by the nonverbal, by the facial expression, the body posture, clenching of the jaw. All those things tell us more than the words. They're more reliable than the words. So sometimes you get a hunch, and getting those hunches is more than just listening. Sometimes you name what you feel. In level 3, you might say, gee, I get a sense that that is something that makes you a little worried, you know? So sometimes you get a hunch, and that would be at level 3, name what you hear. And if the person doesn't agree, they'll just say, no, it's not that, it's this. They might not agree with your hunch, so they'll say, no, it's not that, it's that. And then the person is talking more. The person is communicating more. So language that we use and listening is extraordinarily important. How many feel that they're good listeners? Honestly, that they're good listeners. How many feel they're good listeners? Okay, great. We're going to take a little survey, and this is only for yourselves. It's not to show anybody, because your answers are going to be honest and immediate, what your immediate reaction is. This is not for public display. Do not worry, you will not be handing this in, okay? And you have it in your handouts. So it's handout, I think it's number 3, that should be right. Did everybody find it? At the end of the handout, there are instructions for how to score. They're very simple and straightforward. It's a yes or a no, gets a plus or a minus. And You can start as soon as you're ready. Again, answer the first thing that comes to your mind. Yeah, this is it. This is it. So just read the first paragraph and answer the questions. This one. Just read this and then you, with your pencil, you'll check off.
Did you have a
Oh, I wish. Too early for me.
It's 12 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah, you're right.